This is the Apple case assigned to the BetaForce, which is Dan Carrillo, Diane Keplinger, Nicholas Mognam, Sean Hamilton, and Stephanie Green. Hi, this is Dan Carrillo, and I am covering how attractive the PC industry was in the 1980s, utilizing Porter's 5-force model. To begin, the competitive rivalry in the industry was low to moderate. During the early 80s, Apple was able to grasp the majority of the share of the PC industry. However, their competitive position changed when IBM entered the market in the mid 80s, causing Apple's market share to dip drastically. In addition to IBM, there was four total major competitive companies: IBM, Compaq, Dell, and HP. With Compaq came the mid to late 80s, selling compatible clones of IBM products, and with Dell coming in the mid 80s and HP covering the computer and printers products in the industry. As for the threat in new entrants, that is moderate. In the 1980s, the PC industry was relatively young industry, but it was extremely profitable. Between 1980s and 1990s, Apple saw its sales increase by nearly 20 times throughout the decade. This stat shows that the market demand for the PC products were extremely high, and a high market demand and a chance for profitability would grab the attention of any potential new entrants who wish to enter the market and compete. However, to do so, it would cause a company to have the skilled workers to develop a competitive technology. They would also be faced with significant startup costs for capital investments and research and development. And they would need to invest in their marketing to build brand awareness for their company and their products in order to become competitive in the industry. As for bargaining power of suppliers, I listed that as low to moderate. To manufacture a computer, Apple utilized multiple suppliers and that to manufacture their non-sensitive components, such as memory chips, disk drives, and keyboards. Yet they used few companies to supply their sensitive components, such as microprocessors or operating systems. This strategy allowed Apple to limit their power of their suppliers to raise the prices and cut into their profits. However, during the mid 80s, at the time, the manufacturing of microprocessors, which is the brains of the PC, was limited to only one company, which is Intel. This lack of competitive suppliers increases the risk of high costs when purchasing these components. As for bargaining power of buyers, I listed that as low. In the early 80s, most of the PC buyers were businesses, managers, and first-time customers. At the time, there was not many companies who produced similar products as Apple. The lack of competition at the time reduced the threat of buyers in choosing their competitive products over Apple's, therefore limiting the power of buyers to drive costs down through competition. Next is the threat of substitutes. The threat of substitutes is relatively low. In the 80s, the PC industry was producing a product that was considered disruptive technology. Therefore, at the time, there was not many substitute products that were available that could compete with the PC industry. In fact, the substitutes that were available at the time for PC would be include like typewriters or the handwritten spreadsheets, which the PC industry reinvented with the computer and um, the spreadsheets, computerized spreadsheets that they utilized, as well as the word processing system that a computer offered.
The next question in the case was, how attractive was the personal computer industry in the late 1990s? For this question, our group looked into Porter's 5 forces to perform an industry analysis. We found that the personal computer industry fosters a strong competitive rivalry, as there are about 5 major international companies that dominate the market and compete with each other on a global scale. Each company is looking to provide the best possible computer at the best possible value. So companies are constantly price cutting each other in order to beat the competition. Although some companies may focus more on innovation, such as Apple, or customer service like Dell, to establish their competitive advantage over other companies in order to charge customers a premium. However, many customers are only looking for the best possible value, as they see the product as very similar. As for threats of new entry, we concluded this to be moderately weak. Since a few large organizations, Apple, IBM, Dell, Microsoft, and Compaq, dominate the market, there is a high risk to entering. Although costs are relatively low for components, it's important to achieve economies of scale to maintain a profit in this competitive environment. Many companies expanded globally to meet this requirement. Components and software are now standardized and available for new entries to clone, removing the former barrier of requiring certain technical expertise. However, the dominant presence of these large companies deter new entries. As for substitutes, many of the substitutes do not have the same functionality or performance as PCs and are not as sufficient substitutes towards computer. We concluded that the threat of substitutes is weak, as PCs are a unique product that provides a specific experience that is hard to replicate. In the 1990s, with the public release of the internet, there was a shift in the way people bought products. Direct selling became more common, which gave more power to the buyers. There were more choices, and it was easier to shop than ever before. And in order to sell more computers, companies must sell at a lower price than competitors, eventually feeding back into the cycle and further increasing price cutting and competition. We found it interesting to note that buyer power directly influences competition. When buyers hold up an abundance of power, competition grows more fierce as companies scramble to find ways to beat the competition, most of the time through price gouging or, in some cases like Apple, innovation. Apple can charge more for a higher quality and easier to use product through brand loyalty and product differentiation, unlike many other competitors in this industry. Suppliers in the industry can be split up into 2 segments, the first segment being comprised of the many suppliers that provide the components needed to build a PC. These suppliers don't hold a lot of power since there were so many to pick from, and they ended up competing with each other and sold the components at a low price. The second segment of suppliers were the software providers, dominated by Microsoft's operating system, Windows 98. There is no software competition, and Microsoft could essentially control the PC market. The industry was incredibly attractive and lucrative for those well-established technology companies, specifically Apple, IBM, Microsoft, Intel, Dell, HP, and Compaq. Personal computers were becoming easier to use and would enter a consumer electronics price range for the first time. It was difficult for those looking to penetrate the market to establish a foothold because of such severe competition from major international organizations. Each major competitor in the PC industry saw exponential increases in their net revenue throughout the late 1990s.
Hello, this is Nick Boganum answering question number 4 for BetaForce about how complementary products have evolved in the industry and what impact does it have on Apple's profitability. So when it comes to Apple, they have 4 main focuses, which is hardware, software, services, and application software. I'm going to go through each one as well as the competitors in the industry and affecting their probability. Apple has always been known for having innovative products and always being the first to market with these products, especially when it comes to hardware like the iPhone. However, when it comes down to new services in 2018 and now 2019, there is a lot of competition. In the hardware industry, when it comes to phones, the iPhone is their main product. However, companies like Samsung have been developing a lot stronger force in the market, creating competitive products to a point where sometimes they end up actually beating out Apple when it comes to certain features, as well as being able to create a new sort of environment with that. What I mean by that is Apple, when it comes to their hardware, has a lot of linear technology. So only Apple iPhone chargers will charge iPhones and iPads, while when it comes to Samsung and other companies, they're using the micro USB instead of the iPhone charger adapter. When it comes to the Apple Watch, Mac, and Apple TV for hardware, there are a lot of competitors as well. With the Apple Watch, there have been a string of new Apple Watch or new smartwatches available in the market. With Mac, the Windows PC has always been a fierce rivalry competition, PC actually having more sales than Apple when it comes to the gaming industry, as well as sometimes even in the professional industry, due to Mac having such a limited software being a proprietary technology. When it comes to software itself, we have iOS, Mac OS, Watch OS, and TV OS. The main one basically being Mac OS and iOS for the iPhones as well as MacBooks. The software is extremely limited, which can actually deter a lot of people who really want to customize their PCs. These limitations are meant for the average user being able to have simple products available to them, having less opportunity to have their software compromised. However, it does limit a lot of people when it comes to customization with the products. For example, with Mac OS, especially when it comes to the Apple Store, there's a lot of limited products that aren't available on Macintosh that are available on Windows and PC related products. When it comes to services, we have the iTunes Store, the App Store, the iBook Store, as well as Apple Music. The iTunes Store is very similar towards the Google Play Store, and so that's their service with that. A lot of products are available in both, so that's not too much of a limitation. With the App Store, it's very similar towards that, as plus iBooks. With Apple Music, their main competitors are going to be other streaming services. Apple Music does originally come with all iPhones with the trial service, which is really nice because iPhones are the most popular phone in the world. However, companies such as Spotify and Pandora are breaking the industry, and they're offering a lot of discounts. For example, Spotify does offer student discounts where it's $5 a month, but they also bundled Hulu as well as Showtime with it, so it is creating a lot more of a competitive industry in that aspect. And when it is the same price, but there's another company's offering more features, a lot of people, especially students who are trying to save money, will go towards that. Finally, in application software, we have iLife, iWork, iMovie, and Final Cut Pro. With these softwares, they are basically the Apple version of previous softwares. The biggest competitors are going to be Adobe Illustrator, as well as all the Adobe suites. Especially with Final Cut Pro, there are a lot of different movie editing apps. Final Cut Pro has made its way in, and a lot of people have really enjoyed it because of the simplicity as well as complexity available for advanced users. However, there is a lot of competition in this market. Like I mentioned previously, Apple used to be the spearheader when it came to technology advancements. However, the profitability has declined over the years, and this is because a lot of companies have becoming more technology advanced and are actually competing with them extremely well now, and so they're no longer the front runners. However, they do have a very loyal base of users because all their products are available together, so it does create that sense of pride in being a Mac user. However, a lot of products have evolved in this industry, especially in hardware, software, services, and application software, which has affected their profitability, especially since they haven't made too many new innovative ideas that put them ahead of their competition.